Hey, it's Louise Hvala and you're watching Gatehouse Insights. Today I'm joined by Jules Allen, who is a remarkable Australian with an inspiring and moving story. Guided by the philosophy that your greatest adversity in life is your greatest gift, Jules's message centres on accepting life's challenges and using them as a springboard for positive change. Jules, thank you for being here with me today.
You're welcome.
Before we get into the nitty-gritty of things, I wanted to start off with your journey, because I know it's quite interesting.
Yeah, it's been colourful. I don't find my journey that exciting and can't believe anyone would want to hear it because it's mine. But I guess it started, I was a young girl who was a victim of childhood sexual abuse. My parents separated when I was 10. One took my brother, one took me. And he was kind of my biggest ally in life. So that really turned me upside down. That and a broken family. Then I had a stepsister who had leukemia and died when I was 19. My best friend suicided 6 months after that. And then I ended up in an incredibly abusive relationship. And I had a son from that relationship. So I escaped domestic violence when he was about 6 months old in the middle of the night. And remember getting to this crossroad actually and literally realising that I was a crossroad in life. And there'd also been 3 years of drug and alcohol addiction prior to falling pregnant with him, which was pretty out of hand. I often get really frustrated when I see movies glorify drugs and alcohol, because when you are in that state, it is so ugly and disgusting and hideous. But yeah, I literally remember thinking all my life I'd been a victim, and it wasn't just because I'd been a victim of circumstance, I'd been a victim because I'd also recreated that victim mentality myself. And I realised the shame that I felt. That was the overriding theme for me, was shame. And I had a long think about what I needed to do in order to overcome the shame. And for me, for some reason, I knew that the only way to overcome shame was to make all of those experiences useful. All the things I felt shame about, I had to use them. So I then, within a couple of weeks of leaving that relationship, was fostering my first child and working in child protection, where I was able to put my own experiences to use. So 32 foster kids later, 20 years working with young people in crisis, and that's kind of where it ended up. I had no idea that's where I was heading, but I knew it had to be bigger than me in order to make it matter, I guess.
And now you help younger youths.
Yeah, so when I stopped fostering, my youngest child left home about 18 months ago, and I had the option of continuing foster care. But I weighed up, at that point I had enough experience to be going out into the world and talking on a large scale and affecting as many people as I could. And if I had even one child at home, I couldn't do that. So I had to kind of go, well, can I help one, or can I start working on the masses? And I was a little bit over raising kids. I'd just done 5 teenagers in a row. So, I was either homicidal or suicidal on any given day. So I decided to just move on and try something different. So now I'm public speaking and working in media and, yeah, trying to put it all to good use.
Now, in law, there's a lot of talk about being more resilient with lawyers and to handle mental health issues, stress, and to also sustain high performance. But you actually come from a different point of view, and you say that resilience is not where it's at, and it's actually more than that. Can we dive deeper into that?
Yeah. When I walked into the public speaking space, the biggest movers and shakers are I call them the resilience warriors. They go around talking schools, corporates, about resilience, the importance of resilience, what you need to do to be resilient. And I personally think it's a load of crap, because the reality is we're born with resilience. It's hence why babies survive when they're born premature. We are born, if you see a 2-year-old having a tantrum in the supermarket, that's the most resilient person in that supermarket. If you see a teenager chucking a tantrum, don't tell me that teenager doesn't have resilience. We have it. What we lack is acceptance. And you can't get, your resilience is useless without acceptance. Until you can accept a situation, person, place or thing, you're not going to have resilience, because you're being dominated by whatever it is that you're choosing to dominate you. So I don't think resilience is the issue in our society at all. I don't think kids are killing themselves because they're not resilient. They're killing themselves because they can't accept themselves or their environment or what's going on for them. And it's as simple as that. And after 20 years, I've seen a lot of resilient people kill themselves. They don't lack resilience, they lack acceptance. And I think we need to be teaching acceptance as opposed to resilience across every, no matter what's going on, whether you're in the corporate space, families, schools, acceptance. Got to have it.
How do we get more? How do we be better at accepting situations?
Well, we need to be talking about it. We need to recognise that that's what we're lacking. I know myself, if I'm struggling, if I'm, whether it's with me or with one of my children or with a situation, the first question I'll ask is, are you being accepting? And more often than not, 99% of the time, I'm struggling because I'm not accepting it. I'm not accepting that maybe my son's smoking pot. I'm not accepting that one of them's not doing as well as, I'm not accepting that I'm, when I broke my neck earlier this year, because that's what I do dumb stuff all the time, and everyone says to me, were you scared? Because I was stuck in the middle of nowhere in this bungalow in Sumbawa. And I said, yeah, for about 5 minutes until I realised I just needed to accept what was going on. And then there's no room for fear. There is just what is. And I apply it, someone said to me in an interview earlier today, so did you just one day start accepting things? And I said, no, it's not like you accept one thing and then it's a domino effect. Everything that comes up, our instant response is fight and flight. That's what we do. We want to fight whatever's going on that's distasteful to us. The moment we accept it, that's where the resilience comes in. And that's where you're in a position to use it. And resilience is about using something to your advantage. That's what resilience is. But you can't use it if you don't accept it. So we're missing a key stepping stone. You can't teach resilience without acceptance, hence why it's not landing. Our suicide rate's going through the roof. No offence, but corporates still aren't getting it because people are teaching resilience and it can't be taught. So, resilience warriors, I go to war.
Why do you think it's so hard for us to accept our realities?
Because society, social media, mainstream media, everything tells us that our reality is not good enough. If you look on Instagram on any given day, I can guarantee I'm not looking as good as what someone else my age is. I'm not in the house that I'm meant to be. I don't have the gorgeous husband. I don't have the 2.4 children. I'm reminded everywhere I look on billboards, in any form of media, that my life is not good enough. So therefore, we're constantly taught to not accept what I've been given, and the reality is you've got what you've been given. And you can improve on that and work on that, but this is what you've got. Work with it and accept it. But I don't know of a single media platform that teaches us to accept our realities as opposed to throwing at us something that's not a reality and making us aspire to that. It drives me insane.
Do you think it'll ever change?
I have this faint hope that social media is going to internally combust on itself and just implode and become null and void. Without that, I wonder where we're going to be in 10 years. I guarantee our suicide rate in our young people is going to skyrocket off the scales because I hold that just as responsible as bullying, as drugs, as alcohol. They're all intertwined and this one's the feeder. That's feeding it. And we are responsible. And I'm not a huge subscriber to social media. I have to use it for work, but I can't stand it. So I hope it changes, but it's not looking good at all. Yeah.
Looking at challenges, we all face challenges. Some are severe than others. How can we use these challenges as springboards for change and for positive change?
Yeah. So another thing we do in society is we say we have good or bad experiences, and the assumption is that the good ones are the ones that benefit us. And it's not true. The greatest benefit is from our bad experiences if you know how to use it. So I'm not saying it's pleasant to go through it at the time, but I guarantee that your biggest adversity is your greatest gift. If you look at the people who are changing the landscape, like the Bransons, the Oprah Winfreys, Obama, all of them, they've all experienced adversity in the first part of their lives. They weren't given the silver spoon, and they've gone, okay, this is what I've been given, how do I then use it? I remember when I was on MasterChef, one of the best things I could do on a day off was screw up a recipe. That was the best thing, was to make a mistake, because I go, okay, cool, I know what I've done now. If I got it right all the way through the days off, I knew I'd be screwed in the main kitchen. So if you want to prepare for the main stage, make heaps of mistakes and go, thank God I made those. Accept that life's not going to be perfect, but learn from it. Always say to people, if you're struggling, help someone else. And once again, look at Apple, Google, Branson, McDonald's. They're all helping others. I hate to use McDonald's as an example, but they do have Ronald McDonald House. They're all giving back, and they're the most successful companies in the world. So use your bad experiences, don't discard them. Don't hide, don't shy away, don't kind of bow your head. That's what's going to make you not the good ones.
I wanted to touch on something you wrote in an article, and you've just mentioned it now. The feeling of disappointment must be felt and overcome time and again in order to establish resilience. Can we dive deeper into this, and how can we better manage disappointments as adults?
That's a really good question. How do we better manage them? By knowing they're going to pass, and disappointment is the greatest learning curve. Accepting a disappointment and understanding why we're disappointed. Usually it's because we've had an expectation or a hope. And I don't want to sound like a doomsdayist, but abandon hope and expectation. Get rid of them. Because all they're going to lead to is resentment and disappointment. Just kind of accept that what's going on is the best it's going to be. And if you get an added bonus, great. But, I know Mother's Day is a big one for a lot of people. And I fell into the trap of it this year of getting really disappointed and hurt and resentful and upset because my kids didn't. Why? Because I had an expectation. And the reality is they're just doing the best they can too. Disappointments come in so many forms every day, whether you miss a train, and so does the joy. But I always think when I'm having a joyous moment, enjoy it because it's going to pass. Disappointment's the same. It's going to pass as quickly as the joyous moment does. Time doesn't stagnate, it moves. So know that it's a disappointment. No, it's not going to kill you. Learn from it and move on. They're so quick. I remember when I was working in hospitality and we had this motto, and it was, you won't be thinking about this at the end of the day, will you? And that used to get us through, because if you were dealing with some absolute twit who was trying to make your life hell, and in that moment it's all consuming, and you think, oh my God, and at the end of the day, when you're sitting down for knock-off drinks, are you thinking about that person? No. And that's what disappointments are. They're passing moments to be learnt from. And it's not usually about the other person, it's about you. What did you do to create the disappointment? Because you set it up more often than not. I do anyway.
It's so true when you speak about disappointment, because we do set it up because we have that expectation that it's going to happen, and then when someone else doesn't deliver, you then face disappointment and you look at blaming other people.
Yeah, because they didn't deliver, that you had the expectation that possibly wasn't realistic. You can have expectations of yourself, and yes, you'll disappoint yourself. And that's okay, because you've got to have a bar somewhere. But it's very interesting when we attach it to other people and then blame them. It's like, well, they didn't ask for the expectation, we put it on them. Kids, as parents, we're good at that with our children. I've learnt a lot about that. I have very few expectations. If they've got a pulse and they're not doing drugs or killing someone, I'm pretty good. That's about it. The bar's low. Yep.
In your TED Talk, you speak about an us and them mentality. Can you speak a little bit more about that, and how can we stop judging other people?
The us and them mentality is something that I put a lot of thought into. I couldn't understand. I really wanted to understand what divided us as people, largely. I wanted to understand what stopped us from helping others. I wanted to understand what made us feel exempt from the things that go on in life, which is why we often don't accept things. And what I did come to understand, because I've also been guilty of it, is we in this society and many societies have an us and them mentality. And that is, growing up I was always told I couldn't play with kids on that side of town, the ones that went to those schools, drove those cars, did the jobs I'll never have to do. I mean, the people we're talking about. And I say that with generosity now, because all of those people go through the things that I didn't think I'd ever have to go through. I was trained to believe that I was exempt from that, and that is, drug abuse, domestic violence, depression, anxiety, self-esteem issues, all the things I ended up going through. And one of the reasons I struggled so much to accept my reality is because I was raised to believe that that wouldn't happen to me, because I was one of us, not one of them. And we are all raised to think that way, that there's us and them. And when you think about what all of us have been through in life, and nearly all of us have suffered anxiety, self-esteem issues, some form, we've all been affected by, a suicide or the grief of loss of someone or a family breakdown. There is no us and them. There's just us. And the moment we accept that, and the moment we stop thinking that we're somehow exempt or elite, there is no room for judgment. I say it to women who stand outside the playground of school, and I never used to arrive early and stand with the mothers because I couldn't stand it. And they'll talk about another mother because she's recently become single or, whatever. And I always look at them and think, do you know how close you are to being that person? It's a day away possibly. You don't know if your husband's going to come home and say, look, I've met someone at work, I'm having an affair with my secretary. You don't know. So be very careful about who you choose to judge, because there's no us and them. We are all in the same boat. We're all going to experience the same things. And the best thing we can do is be really accepting of other people who are going through it and ourselves when we go through it, and not go, how did this happen to me? Well, it happened because you're human and you're not an exception to the rules, you know. My greatest saying in the last 12 months, because I had a really crap 12 months, was I'm not in Syria. You know, there's also always worse off. I'm not in Syria. I'm not listening to bombs drop on people around me and possibly my children. It's, you know, in this society there is no us and them. And so, you know, when I walk down the street and I see a homeless person with their head bowed, take the time to look them in the eye and say hello, because you don't know if that's going to be you. And you go, oh no, that would never be me, really? You don't know that. I guarantee that person didn't think that was going to be them. So, yeah, the us and them thing really irks me. It's just naive.
From your experiences, what have you seen, or why do you think others strive on, regardless of the challenges they've been faced with, and others give up and just say, this is just too hard?
Acceptance. Yeah. People who choose to accept what's gone on for them, the moment you accept it, it's useful. And it's useful to someone else. They get the basic theory of life. We're not here for ourselves, we're here to serve others. And when you understand that, you accept your reality and go, how do I best use this to serve someone else? That's what keeps you going forward. You know, if you're having a hard day, go and help someone else, because there's always going to be someone worse off. And the first thing you do is remove it from yourself. You're not focused on your problem. I guarantee at the end of the day, you've probably forgotten what your problem was, because the person you're helping is far worse off than you. And people say, you know, what stopped you from giving up? What does giving up look like? What does that look like? And you see, I can't, you know, I say that, but I kind of do know what it looks like, and it's living a half-life. It's just surviving. It's clicking over the day and looking forward to bedtime. That's not living, you know. So you can choose to live, or you can choose to just survive, and I choose life. Doesn't mean some days I'm surviving. We all have the days when we're just surviving. That's human. But to challenge yourself to be more is about challenging yourself to understand that you're here for other people and that they're not worth giving up on. So I always remove it from me. If I can't find enough value in me, I can always find value in someone else. That definitely keeps me going.
From a corporate point of view, what can firms and corporates do to, I suppose, encourage their employees to speak up if they're dealing with any issues such as stress or anxiety or depression, and to make it a real safe environment for them to really speak about?
That's an interesting question. I saw something last year which stuck with me. I was at a corporate event. It was one of the white ribbon events, and this huge corporation had put up their hand to be a nominated white ribbon ambassador company. And so they put on a massive event, and I think about 300 people came, and I was one of the speakers on domestic violence. But the CEO of that company had experienced domestic violence about 25 years earlier, and she, for the first time in her life, decided to stand in front of her peers and talk about what she'd gone through. And I'll never forget how powerful that was. And I guarantee everyone in that firm would now feel comfortable talking about it if they were in that situation. Because it does start from the top, and the top have to be seen to be talking. You can't be sitting up there saying, we want you to talk, and having these walls and barriers around your own experiences. If you haven't had the same experience, take the time to ask the question, are you okay? And then take the time to listen. It's that simple. I find in a lot of settings, when you see someone struggling, we tend to recoil. Or if they're behaving in a certain way, we assume they're behaving that way because of us, and they're not. They're behaving that way because of what's going on for them. And if we're struggling with them, you can be guaranteed they're struggling 10 times more with themselves. So I think if I was talking to the higher levels, keep a very close eye on your staff, and if you see someone struggling, step in, don't step back, don't reprimand them, pull them aside, sit them down and say, are you okay? It's a really simple question, and then listen. Take the time to listen. People don't need answers all the time, they just need to be heard. And I think we need to put a lot more time into that rather than developing strategies around, how we're going to make more money. If you allow someone to be heard, you turn a half person into a full person. I guarantee you're going to get a lot more out of that person in the workplace than if you've got someone sitting in their silence. So start talking, and start talking from the top. openly. We're all human. We're not just corporates, we're humans.
And I think talking from the top is important because it just opens your staff up to speaking about, and they feel comfortable, as you said. So.
Yeah, and you know, people at the top of companies are not, as I said before, they're not exempt from the things that go on in intimate relationships and, you know, with divorces, with anything. They've all had experiences prior to them being who they are in that position. And that's the stuff we need to be talking about. We need to be humanised in the workplace, not robotic, not shielded, not guarded. You know, I need a workplace where I can walk to and someone says, how are you? Yep, pretty crap, having a crap day. It's okay, I don't need anyone to fix it, but thanks for hearing it. You know, that needs to be okay. And I guarantee if you hear that person, their day will slightly turn around, you know. If you shut them down, you're not going to get a fully functioning person. It's so important.
Before we wrap up, what's some words of wisdom you would share with our audience?
Oh, when struggling, help someone else. That's a big one. And always treat everyone, whether it's the person who opens the door for you or parks your car, treat them as someone worthy of being met. You know, if someone's behaving in a not okay way in your work environment, don't treat them as a problem, because what you're going to do is have a problem on your hands. If you treat them as a person worthy of being met, you're going to have a person worthy of being met. So just apply that to anyone, to the woman at the checkout. Everyone deserves to be treated as if they're worthy of being met, and the benefits in that, in my experience, have been beyond measure. That benefits me greater than anything else I do in life, is just treat everyone as worthy. So that's the big one.
Jules, you're amazing, and thank you for sharing.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Now, Jules and I would love to hear from you. What is the biggest insight you're taking away from today's conversation? Comment and share below and let us know. If you like this episode, please subscribe to our channels and share this video with your friends. And thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time on Gatehouse Insights.